room as an FPC student, so it's good to be back. Oh, you need to get going? Well, while we're on pause, we had a little quiz for you. The prize being a copy of a book called Tragedy in the Commons. If you're familiar with Samara, you probably have heard about the book. As Andrew mentioned, we are getting ready to interview members of Parliament. This is actually the second time Samara has done this work. So the first round and our findings are explained in this book. So as a quiz for you guys, here's our knowledge testing question. This is a quote about democracy, and I want you to tell me who said it. Wait till I finish. Our democracy is threatened whenever we take it for granted. All of us should be throwing ourselves into the task of rebuilding our democratic institutions. Does anyone know who said that? Or want to take a guess? Can't go wrong. At this point, you might just win the book because no one else has that. Good to see the room. Yes.
So John A?
No, although if you know me, I do occasionally quote Sir John A.
Chaplain.
Also a good guess, but no.
Samara.
No. This isn't from the book, by the way, so just so you know.
And a hint, it was very, very recent.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's
It's a
a
big
hint.
hint.
Sorry, back to the room.
Obama.
Yes.
So you win the mug.
It was Marcy, right? Right. Who? So someone familiar from high school here.
Oh.
Riley. Sorry. I think you just. Does anyone else here from high school? Sorry. Great. Thanks, Leah. I will do a better job of speaking to the mic. So my job, I'm going to just introduce Samara Kenna and turn over the mic to my colleague Christina, who is Samara's MP Exit Interview Coordinator, and speak a bit more about the project that we want to tell you about tonight. This is sort of our agenda. What is Samara? So kind of capturing what President Obama just said in his farewell speech. We really believe at Samara that it's important that citizens are involved in their democracy. Our democracy depends on the creativity, the energy, the commitment of citizens, and we at Samara are a nonpartisan charity with an educational mandate to strengthen our democracy by encouraging citizen engagement, as well as, I think, improving our institutions through our research. So the MP Exit Interview project we're going to talk about tonight is one of our major research efforts, but we do other types of research, including public opinion work on Canadians. We survey MPs about their habits in the House of Commons, including around things like heckling. Some of our other research reports recently published are looking at our electoral systems in Canada and how they would work to sort of help inform the electoral reform debate. And we also published a report this fall on youth voter turnout. So pretty broad ranging, and our engagement initiatives are sort of focused on how to cultivate a culture that celebrates engagement. This room is an example of that, but not everyone has either the sort of confidence to get started. Some of our work is with newcomers and young Canadians on building their sort of political voice. And other work is about celebrating sort of local leaders. We call that our Everyday Political Citizen Project. And so every year we look for nominations of ordinary Canadians who are democratic heroes in our view, who are finding time amidst all our busy lives to give back to their communities or find a way to lead, and sort of allows us to showcase through hundreds of nominations we receive the full diversity of people involved in public life. It's not just about being in office, and also the full diversity of ways to be involved. Samara, and by the way, for those who are wondering, what is that? That image up close is a maple key. So that sort of helicopter seed that falls from maple trees. If you ask a biologist what is that called, apparently they would say Samara. I've never gotten a chance to ask a biologist that. But it is a wonderful symbol of Canada, I think, because it's from those seeds we get our maple leaves. So Samara, we're about planting ideas, about sort of nurturing the ground, and hopeful that our work will pay dividends down the road as our democracy and our institutions and citizen engagement grows and remains strong.
So one of the key ways that we try and do that is through the MP Exit Interview Project. So to give you a bit of history, as Jane mentioned, we have done this before. So we started in 2008, and we ended up interviewing 80 former members of Parliament from the 38th, 39th, and 40th Parliament. So they came from across the country, from all parties, and our co-founders, Michael McMillan and Alison Lowe, actually went in person across the country and sat down, sometimes in people's homes, in their offices, in their communities for 2 hours, and asked them about why they first got involved in politics, their experiences, what it was actually like to sit in the House of Commons, and then their recommendations for improving the system. And if you think about it, it's kind of puzzling that no one had done this before, because every time we have turnover in the House, we're losing a lot of knowledge and lived experiences, and no one was capturing that. So we are hoping to kind of create a database and a kind of archive of the experiences of former MPs that can be used to actually change how politics is practiced. And so it led to the book Tragedy in the Commons and 4 research reports, which you can find on our website. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the findings from last time, because I think it might interest some of you. I know a lot of your projects are more municipal, but I think a lot of them could be translated to the federal level, and there are some federal politics, like My Democracy with a Zero, that I think some of our findings might interest you, I hope. So this is what we heard in the last round. We heard that MPs don't necessarily know what they're meant to be doing. Some of them said they're there to represent their constituents, which to them meant that they were there to talk about experience in Peterborough, or, and just be the voice of their constituents on public debate. Some of them said that their role was to come up with policy and to enact legislation. Others said that their role was to help their constituents access government services, so applying for visas. So there's a broad range of answers, and there was no kind of clear consensus on what their job description is, which is somewhat troubling. MPs also described that they're really frustrated with many of the things that everyone is frustrated with. So they're frustrated with their parties and having these speaking lines and being told what they have to talk about and what they're supposed to be working on. They're frustrated with the centralization of power and the fact that a lot of decisions seem to be made behind closed doors and imposed on them. And they also have a poor perception of politicians and the House of Commons, which leads to point number 3 on the right, the anti-politician narrative. It was really interesting that they often claimed that they had to kind of be dragged into politics, that they never kind of thought that they would go into politics. Heaven forbid someone aspired to that. But instead they were asked so many times that they had to go in. And eventually kind of questioned, like, surely that must not be true, that they must have thought about politics before. But politicians often have such a negative perception that people don't want to admit that it's something that they aspire to. So from that, we've now worked on changing the discourse around how we talk about politicians and not constantly degrading the profession as something that only terrible, like, crooks and liars go into, and hopefully encouraging more diverse people to consider it as a worthy profession. We also found that MPs said that a lot of the important work that they do is happening off camera. So it's happening either in committees where there's generally less public scrutiny, and it's basically happening outside of public eye, which is also really interesting and kind of concerning that a lot of the kind of really partisan vitriol that you hear in the House of Commons is kind of an act. And that's something to watch in the next few months. The Senate, nerdy fun fact, is going to be televised for the first time when they move to this new temporary location. So it'll be interesting to see how a body of legislature changes their behavior when television is introduced. And they also talked about the importance of discussing what are political parties. Oftentimes they would talk about political parties but mean different things. So sometimes they were talking about the whip, sometimes they were talking about, like, party conventions and that as a part of the policy process. But it wasn't very clear, and oftentimes parties weren't very transparent with the process of being nominated to join the party. And that was something they want to change. And finally, they said that it's really important that more citizens are connected to politics and we have better civic education and more people are involved in making policy. So this time we have a completely different cohort. So we're interviewing former members of the 41st Parliament. So those are people who were defeated or resigned prior to the 2015 election, or in the 2015 election. So you can think of former Conservative cabinet ministers like John Baird, Peter MacKay, ranging to the rookie NDPers from Quebec like Lauren Liu and Elaine Freeman. So it's a really broad range of former MPs, and we're hoping, the plan is to interview 80 of them over the next few months. Out of 197 are technically part of our cohort. So we're scheduling them. We actually start our first interview next week. But one thing we really want to do differently is dig deeper into some specific themes. And that's something we're hoping to get your thoughts on later on, because it is still a bit of a process that we're figuring out. But we have settled on these as kind of broad areas that we want to look at. So we want to look at gender and diversity, because last time we didn't really ask about how your identity intersects with the experience of being a politician and whether there are any additional barriers or additional pressures that MPs face because of their identity. We also want to look at some of the unique factors of the 41st Parliament. We had a majority government, a very strong majority. It was the Stephen Harper's government. And we had kind of an increasing partisan divide. A lot of MPs have said kind of colloquially or in the media that committees were really divided and it was not an environment where people worked a lot across the aisle. There was also this unique orange wave that brought in all these MPs that didn't have any parliamentary experience. So it's kind of an unusual parliament. So we want to dig into some of those factors and how they also affected the experience of MPs. And specifically, MPs and their role as policymakers. So we want to look at how MPs actually end up being part of kind of the legislative process. Because as I mentioned earlier, we heard last time that oftentimes they're helping their constituents access government services. So they're spending their time making calls to GAP or making calls to the ECC or different departments on behalf of constituents. But we at Samara really believe that it's really important to have diverse people contributing to our public policy. And we believe that MPs from all different parties have important perspectives to bring to that. So we want to explore how MPs use tools like private members' bills, and whether those are things that parties are influencing or whether they have agency over those needs. And then finally, technology and engagement. So it's kind of more of an exploratory topic for us. As you might have noticed from our PowerPoint, we're not necessarily super techie people. So we'd love to get your input on what kind of questions you would want to ask if you had a former MP sitting in front of you. Like, what would you want to know about technology and their use of technology, or how and why they didn't use any innovative tools in their role? So we have a few challenges. So this is where we'd like to hear your thoughts. So as I just mentioned, I'm just super curious to hear, like, if you had Stephen Harper, maybe not Stephen Harper, if you had, I don't know, any former MP that you can think of in front of you, and you could ask them anything related to technology, what would you want to know? Yeah.
Do you trust in technology?
Yeah.
Ethically assessing? Sorry, I think your point was saying that you should, how you ethically assess.
About how they would go about discussing that
in like podcasts, but also really kind of stepping back, seeing like maybe a lot of the information in aggregate, if there's a possibility, if there's repeated questions, not to turn it into a poll, but to like point out patterns. If that's something that interests you, it might be a nice way to get kind of a quick
Here.
I guess I was wondering if you could possibly like a two-part release for you, pretty much is the same way that we asked the government to release the data first and let see what people come up with and analyses that they do, and then a real release where it's polished for regulars. Yeah.
Normally you do it the opposite, so that's kind of cool.
I know it's a lot to ask, but a serialized documentary style that's like a Netflix piece that somebody can binge watch 6 or 8 episodes.
No problem.
40
We'll get on that.
minutes
Yeah.
I mean, the Canadian has the cards. Yeah.
Infographics if they're relevant.
Look at you over there.
Stories are nice, and it's really important to get piece of experience or whatever this person. And of course, nothing beats personal conversation. But we really want to have a contrast between that and kind of what we would have to say. In other words, I'm glad that you do this, how you decide the research, where you in theory, what sort of people you see, how are these things, because otherwise you get lost in the weeds. And I have another question. Maybe you get out of this section here, what the larger challenge we have in terms of keeping our democracy on track. And then just throw this out because it really occurs to me. Kevin O'Leary, so let's be with us and history is how it is running, but he's officially now. And one of his first ideas is, he's sitting down, is to sell Senate seats so it becomes a profit center as opposed to a, what is it, health sector, which is typical of theory, but I mean, if we don't do the fact checking from the beginning, we're going to have what's happening to us. Because nobody took it seriously and did not do that. So I know that it's quite a bit to try to set yourself up as a kind of watchdog. I mean, obviously, the whole thing that is not wrong. Actually, a bit of that, but kind of like a fact checker on what's going on as it's going on. You know, it's very nice that we do this. It's important work. I'm not letting you try to call them out as it goes. If something really is expression, it's just anyhow, I just want to go that as
Thank you. We'll take one last comment.
I was just remembering the Guardian did a really cool Snowden interactive NSA file encoded thing. So if we could sort of take some of those elements where they incorporate the video, it's more of a scrolling website. So as you scroll, things come up.
That's super cool. And this is kind of a similar question, I guess. So maybe we already covered this to some extent, but we have this huge archive from last round of interviews, and they're all just kind of in a folder at our office. And I think that there must be a better way to use that data. So I'd also be curious if anyone has any ideas. Presumably it'd be kind of the same that we just heard, but they're Word documents, just the transcribed interviews. And MP3 files, audio files as well. Yeah?
Do you permission
We do, yeah. Yes.
Have they read what you transcribed?
No, they've not read what we transcribed.
We have legal permission. We had everyone sign a release before the interview that they're selling.
Yeah, but what you transcribed is what they think.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, interesting problem to build. Yeah.
But I think you should publish it all.
Who do you think? What do we just? Having just hung out recently on looking at today at members' expenses in PDF format though. How do we? Is it worth trying to invest the effort to make that more accessible, more searchable than just files, or do we trust the world to figure it out?
We do it in tiers. So
Yeah.
You turn in the text to the form, which is basically you post it, and then if you have the resources, you're able to sort of broadcast this software to the site, and then import some database, and basic database, and split it back to it. And you can mine that for your content. And the problem with returns, you have to do that.
Sorry. It's like you can make an interactive website. I mean, this is sort of an investment, but if you guys are really interested in publishing it, and you can do it a bunch of different ways, like sort of like a click-through like bubble system. So you could be like search by MP, search by topic, search by year, that kind of thing. So there's like different ways to break it down. I mean, like it is a sort of website-intensive project, but I think that's a really interactive way for people to use it. And yeah, there are like websites, you know, some of the open data websites, or even like the Ministry of Children and Youth Services. Their website is actually like that, like a little bubble pop through, and I think it's a really great access to information.
I'll take 3 more comments. So yeah.
Quick question, are they anonymized or are the responses like tagged to it was John Bird?
Well, we have them like tied to a specific person, and in the book Tragedy of the Commons, we did like attribute the quotes, but we could also anonymize the data.
Oh no, I think it's better if it's not. Like
Yeah.
if it is attributed, because then you can just start tagging paragraphs and co-responses by, you know, party, by years of experience, age, you know, male, female, if they're talking about it's like personal thing, if it's a party issue, if it's a constituent issue, and then kind of even like line by line or paragraph by paragraph, and then people can search for topics or trends.
On a related note, if you have tagged data already, like if you research models, these are at least the list from how rigorous.
We used in vivo software, so you can
Yeah,
use
so that's standard.
Okay, final comment. Oh, so maybe what we'll do is we'll take a final comments, anyone who wants to say anything, and then we're sticking around, so we're happy to chat further. So yeah.
It's not what I say. It's very, a lot of commitment and expense to run our websites. It's potential. We don't want to start a project and I just wonder if you look at the information out there. Whether you're promoting universities, this is environment supporting to us for students, the way that we really know. So they would have to do it with application it's similarly maintained year in, year out. And it's a separate area. And I tried to start with my in a place where it doesn't fit. And if you get one of the universities, anybody will take it on your laptop as well. Because it's a huge project. One other person can do it. And it's a long way. It doesn't work with you. You have to have the resources in it to do it. So
Reality checks are important.
Thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to be sticking around, as I said, and we'd love to keep chatting. And then we also have our email addresses. So if you come up with an idea in the middle of the night, a question that we just have to ask, please send it our way. And thank you so much for listening and participating. This is so great. Super helpful. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very, very, very much, Jane and Christina. So now's the part where we actually get to really, really brief announcements. So this is the part where, you know, if anyone here, you have about 20, 30 seconds on the floor. So if there's anything you'd like to share with the group, so now's the time to do it. So any events, successes, people you're trying to connect with, jobs, or even just ask a question. So anyone can just raise their hand. I'm just cognizant of the time, so I won't give too much. So if anyone has any announcements, just please raise your hand. Raphael.
The TTC Riders organization is having a summit on Saturday. There are very few spots left.
Are there any details for that?
It's on Eventbrite. I can post it to this time as well.
Okay, thank you. Chris.
We're having our second town hall for Democracy Kit, but it's the first broadcast. So wherever you're at, 6 p.m. tomorrow, join in and go to democracykit.org to RSVP. And Mayor Nenshi will be giving an address, but we'll also be reporting back on content development today, as well as talking about where the project is at, web development, all of that. So it would be great if you could tune in. democracykit.org, and RSVPs are on the homepage, and it's at 6 p.m. to 7.
There's an event called the Open Data Book Club, which is Thursday at the Toronto Reference Library. So this is the first one of the year, so we're just talking about planning in general, and we're also releasing the data set from the My Democracy Zero. Yeah, so if you're interested or you know anything about like clustering, machine learning, or network analysis, you should show up.
Awesome. I'm going to use my privileges as moderator because I also have an announcement. So this Friday is the Digital Government Meetup, and that's in Orange. So I work at the Brookfield Institute, and we released a white paper making recommendations based on an engagement we had with the Ontario Digital Government team back in October. So that's this Friday. I believe it's at Friend from 6:30 to 8, something around that time. 5:30. It's on Meetup. You can find the times there. Yes, I'll post it on Slack, and you can see yours truly present some recommendations that both with my colleague as well. So hope to see some of you there, and our white paper is also live on our website.
And the Fluid Salon is happening this, I want to say Friday. It's on Hacknight region. Thursday. Thank you. So yeah, Thursday, and there's an RSVP. It's also on Eventbrite. Just look for Fluid Salon.
Also at the Reference Library.
Awesome. Any other announcements? Alex.
All right, I got two. Number one, I'm looking for people. I have a work opportunity working for the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Development. So we present info on job market trends and skills experience. And they have a website. It's called Ontario Job Futures. If you take a look at it, you might get really sad. It's not designed very well. So we're looking for somebody to kind of take all of that really, really wonderful information and make it into a form that makes sense to people. So that's number one. Number two, on March 4th, it's Codacross. Who here likes open data? Everyone likes open data. It's fantastic. Codacross is a day, we're celebrating International Open Data Day. So it's hosted by Civic Tech Toronto, which is us. The location's to be announced, but there will be momos, or there will be dumplings. That's important. So if you would like to join us, please, or if you would like to help plan, please let me know. I'm right here. And if you want to submit a challenge for Open Codacross, also come talk to me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That was a long announcement. There's time for maybe 2 more at most.
Just a quick one. Free post drinks after or post hangouts if people want to go to Gabby's. So after 9.
Okay.
I'll actually go this time and get down.
Which
Gabby's? Sorry.
The one on which one is people?
Bloor.
The one on Bloor. Okay. Follow Pat.
So tomorrow at 12, there's a lecture by Dr. Ann Kabukian talking about privacy and security by design, about tech research. So I'll post it on the Slack.
Cool. And as a fun fact, Dr. Ann Kabukian is the sister to Rafi Kabukian.